Om Gyantimirandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhutai Mahatparima Puro Vibhur Nirmaya Kshete Yadamusha Purusha Bhakte Ganan Sada Sada Satmaka Ilang Krishista Bhagavan Vacham Sime Hare Krishna. So with the blessings of all the Vaishnavas assembled here and online, we can try to read from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the final 90th chapter, which is called Summary of Lord Krishna's Glories, text 21. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Priya Rava Padani Bhashase. Priya Rava Padani Bhashase. Mrita Sanjeevi Kaya Nayagira. Mrita Sanjeevi Kaya Nayagira. Karavam Kim Adya Te Priyam. Karavani Kim Adya Te Priyam. Badate Valgita Kantha Kokila. Badame Valgita Kantha Kokila. Priyarava Padani Bhashase. Priyarava Padani Bhashase. Mrita Sanjivika Yanaya Gira. Mrita Sanjivika Yanaya Gira. Karavani Kimadjate Priyam. Karavani Kimadjate Priyam. Badame Valgita Kantha Kokila. Badame Valgita Kantha Kokila. Hare Krishna. Priya Rava Padani Bhashase. Mrita Sanjivika Yanaya Gira. Karavani Kimadjate Priyam. Vadate Valgita Kantha Kokila. Yarava Padani Bhashase. Anyone else? Hare Krishna. Synonyms: Priya, dear. Rava, of him whose sounds. Padani, the vibrations. Bhashase, your uttering. Mrita, the death. Sanjivikaya, which brings back to life. Anaya, in this. Gira, voice. Karavani, I should do. Kim, what? Adya, today. Te, for you. Priyam, pleasing. Vada, please tell. Me, me. Valgita, sweetened by these sounds. Kantha, O you whose throat. Kokila, O cuckoo. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace. Hey, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So these are the queens of Krishna in Dwaraka speaking. O sweet-throated cuckoo, in a voice that could revive the dead, you are vibrating the same sounds we once heard from our beloved, the most pleasing of speakers. Please tell me what I can do today to please you. Purport. As Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains, though the sound of a cuckoo is very pleasant, Lord Krishna's wives perceive it as painful because it reminds them of their beloved Krishna and exacerbates their pain of separation. Hare Krishna. So this is a very exalted topic, and we'll try to go a little bit deeper into it. So as it's been explained in one of the previous verses, text 14, in the purport, that these statements by queens in separation are manifestation of prema vaichitriya, or prema vaichitya, sometimes also it says in Prabhupada books. So this is separation one feels while in the association with beloved. So it's very interesting. This is one type of separation devotees of Krishna feel even in his presence. Because queens, they are not separated from Krishna. Krishna is right there, but still they feel the pain of separation. But they enjoy it. It's a very controversial subject. How can you enjoy pain? But even in the material world, we know that no pain, no gain. It's very interesting that according to chemistry or chemistry in our body. There are some chemicals which are in charge of pleasure. I can't remember them all, but endorphin is most prominent. Then what are the other ones? Dopamine and oxytocin and something else. Adrenaline also, some people enjoy adrenaline, like doing extreme sports. Many times I was puzzled with the mountain climbers who climb Everest mountain. What's in there? Why do they climb? They cannot even get fame from that, because the fame was taken by those who were first to climb, right? But then so many thousands of people already climbed the Everest, so they cannot even get fame from that. And it's very risky business. You can easily die while trying to climb, and even more by trying to go down. And it costs a lot of money too. I've heard that it's average maybe 30-40 lakhs rupees one time to climb the Everest. So I suppose it's a very expensive way to die. And there are many dead bodies on the slopes of Everest, which no one can collect because it's very difficult, you know. The air is very thin, it's difficult to breathe. So people have difficulty carrying themselves, what to speak of carrying some, you know, extra weight. So those bodies, they lay there for decades, but luckily they are not decaying because it's, you know, freezing up there. So they're freshly frozen for many years. And many bodies, they serve like landmarks for the climbers. They say that if you climb 8,000 meters up, you will see yellow boots. It doesn't mean that yellow boots are standing there. Someone lying in yellow boots. So this man is serving as a landmark for other climbers, and also a warning that this can happen to you too. But still people climb. So why do they climb? I couldn't figure it out. But then I realized, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am adventure and I am gambling. So it's the ultimate gambling, gamble with your own life, and amazing adventure, I suppose, risking your life going up there. So because it's Krishna, and Himalayas are also Krishna, right? That Everest. I was thinking, Everest, interesting name, right? You can rest forever on the slopes of this mountain. Maybe that's why it's called Everest. And yeah, because it's Krishna, Himalayas are Krishna, people are so attracted, even though they risk their lives. Even though many of them, they don't understand it is Krishna, but still they are attracted. This is how powerful Krishna is. And yeah. Anyway, enough of horrors. But this is one thing people enjoy, adrenaline rush, right? When they do extreme sports. So it's very troublesome, it's very miserable, but they take pleasure out of it. So we don't have to do that. But there are much safer and much healthier ways to experience high level of pleasure while practicing bhakti. Anybody wants to experience high level of pleasure while practicing bhakti? So one way to gain endorphin, and endorphin is, chemical which produces euphoria, is very simple. Take cold shower. Few minutes of cold shower, and you will have endorphin rush, and you will enjoy life. So it's interesting that many techniques to have safe pleasure are built in our sadhana, right? So you think, those who take cold shower, they suffer, but actually they enjoy. People become addicted to those cold showers after a while because it gives so much pleasure. And so, yeah, it is like that also in the material world. This is the point that, if you do not agree to be exposed to misery, you cannot get any pleasure. So we can understand that there is some analogy with Krishna Lila. So they go through misery of separation, but they experience that misery as greatest pleasure. Why? Because they're totally focused on Krishna. It's interesting. Srila Prabhupada said one time, I didn't read it in any books, but I read it on a wall in Mayapur. It was written, Prabhupada's quote. I don't know where this quote is coming from, but apparently Srila Prabhupada said, always think of Krishna and you will always be happy. Just try it, make an experiment. Interesting. So the more we think of Krishna, Prabhupada says, the more we enjoy. And so we can understand that those queens of Dwaraka, they really enjoy their life, and they enjoy separation from Krishna, well, misery. Separation is meant to be miserable, but they enjoy that separation from Krishna, even in Krishna's presence. And one very famous example of that in Braj is Prema Sarovar. I don't know if you ever recalled that pastime lately. If someone spoke about it, we can skip it. How many of you are familiar with this pastime? Please raise your hands. Anyone familiar? Not so many devotees. Anyway, we'll briefly tell that pastime. So, once upon a time, Krishna and Radharani were sitting in a kunja and enjoying their association, each other's association. And Madhu Mangal was guarding the kunja from outside with a big stick. And Madhu Mangal is very fond of sweets, especially ladus, and sometimes he takes too much of those, and then he tends to doze, right? So I guess it's a typical Chokidar Lila to sleep while on guard. So he fell asleep while guarding the kunja. And meanwhile, one bumblebee, Bringa, he sensed the smell of very fragrant lotus flowers. But these were not lotus flowers, but these were the scent of Radha and Krishna. But bumblebee could not figure it out, that these are persons, not flowers. For him, the faces of Radha and Krishna appeared like two blossoming lotus flowers, one blue, one golden lotus, right? Blue lotus is Krishna, and golden lotus is Srimati Radharani. And so he flew into the Kunja unnoticed because Madhu Mangal was dozing. And then he came in between those two flowers, and he was buzzing there, and he couldn't decide which flower to start with, blue or golden. And Krishna was cool, but then Radharani got alarmed. She started trying to cover her face, being afraid of the bumblebee, and tried to chase him away. And of course, when ladies are in dangerous situation, what do? They start screaming and shouting. So Srimati Radharani started screaming and shouting, ah! And Krishna was surprised, what's the big deal, bumblebee? But then Madhu Mangal from outside, he heard all this screaming and shouting. And so he ran into the Kunja with a stick, big stick. And then he saw bumblebees trying to land on Srimati Radharani's face. And then he shouted, and he started, moving his stick, threatening the bumblebee, chasing it away with the stick. So bumblebee went away, and while all this commotion was going on, Radharani just covered her face, trying to protect herself from bumblebee. And she sat like that with her face covered. And Madhu Mangal, after chasing the bumblebee, he came back and he said, Madhu is gone, referring to bumblebee, because it's one of the name of bumblebee. But Madhu is also a name of Krishna, right? Madhusudan. And then Radharani, she thought Madhu is gone means Krishna is gone. And she started crying. She was thinking Krishna left. And she was crying, Krishna, where are you? How could you leave me like that? And Krishna is surprised. He is sitting right in front of Srimati Radharani, and she is crying in separation from him. But then he realized how much she loves him and how much she attached to him, and he started crying as well. And so they were crying for a long time. Srimati Radharani was crying because she couldn't figure out that Krishna is right in front of her, because the tears were covering her eyes. And Krishna was crying just by seeing Radharani's ecstasy. And they cried so much, they cried one big lake, which is now known as Prema Sarovar. So if you go to Vrindavan, if you go to Braj, you can visit Prema Sarovar. I'm sure some of you already did so. Jai Shri Shri Radharas Bihari, Shri Shri Siddharam Lakshman Hanuman, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. How many of you have been to Prema Sarovar? Okay, few of you have been. So this is one example, Prema Vaichitra, or Prema Vichitriya, it's happening in Krishna's pastimes. And so in here, the queens of Krishna in Dwaraka also experienced the same type of ecstasy. Actually, one point to note, according to Rupa Goswami, as he describes, that those queens, they are transformations of gopis. So because, Jiva Goswami described that. Some people criticize that Krishna had parakiya relationship with gopis, but then Jiva Goswami describes now that these relationships are actually swakiya. And so If we look at this verse, it's a very powerful verse. That's why, we didn't want to move away and discuss anything else. It is describing the perfection of Krishna consciousness. And what is the perfection of Krishna consciousness? That is to be totally absorbed in Krishna, in Krishna's names, in Krishna's forms, in Krishna's qualities, and Krishna's pastimes. Any of you interested to be fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness? So that's why, if we take this verse as example and as a guideline, Prabhupada was explaining that if we really understand Bhagavatam, we can discuss not one verse. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was famous for discussing first verse of Bhagavatam for 2 months in Dhaka, right? And Prabhupada was saying, if you really understand Bhagavatam, we can discuss not only one verse for many months, one line, or even one word we can discuss forever, right? Especially some special words like Krishna. You can discuss the word Krishna forever. And so this is a very important verse which gives us all 3 things we need in Krishna consciousness: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. So Prayojana is to be fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness in love, as it is exemplified by the queens in Dwaraka. And there are Sambandha and Abhideya as well related to that in the same verse. And so we suggest that the 4 lines, not 4 lines, 2 padas of this verse are introducing us to Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And to easily remember those 3, we can summarize them with 3 words, and all 3 start with A. So it's easy to remember. First one is absorption in Krishna consciousness. Then acknowledgement of benefits coming from practice of Krishna consciousness. And third is appreciation. And not only appreciation of Krishna, but appreciation of devotees of Krishna. So, very important point, because without devotees of Krishna, there is no Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna is never alone. He is always surrounded by his devotees. And Krishna can never be separated from devotees. So, if someone tries to be Krishna conscious, excluding devotees, that's going to be a failure. So appreciation of devotees, that's really important point, which is discussed in here. So we'll discuss this one by one. They are going in a little bit different order, but it doesn't matter. That first, absorption, that's the goal, that's prayojana. And so, how they are absorbed in Krishna consciousness? The first line of this verse says, Priya Ravya Padani Bharshase. They are saying, you are chanting the words of our beloved. Can you imagine that? Hearing cuckoo, and in the voice of cuckoo, hearing the words of Krishna. That's unbelievable. We might sometimes hear something connected to Krishna, if we are fortunate. Like, there is one bird, very common bird in Sridham Mayapur. If you've been to Sridham Mayapur, you probably noticed how many birds are there. huge variety of birds, and very beautiful birds, and very sweet singing birds. And one very common bird in Mayapur is spotted dove. Spotted dove. And it sings, I've noticed this time somehow, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, I've noticed what it sings. Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, 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 Gaur. So it sings the names of Nitai Gaur. Very amazing. So, and there are plenty of those. You just listen to the songs of birds and you remember Nitai and Gaur. But that's relatively easy to hear Nitai Gaur or something like that. But to hear, for example, Bhagavad Gita, right? The song of Krishna, the words of Krishna, to hear in the voice of cuckoo, to hear, for example, Bhagavad Gita, that's totally different level of being absorbed in Krishna consciousness, but this is the level of those queens. They hear Krishna's words in the song of cuckoo. And in this verse, they also explain how it is possible. Anyway, this is one very prominent and important point in Bhagavad Gita. If you remember Bhagavad Gita 6.30, which is very important verse, Yamam pashyati saratra sarvam chamaya pashyati sachaham na pranashami sachamena pranashyati, right? And I wanted to read the translation by His Grace Kalakanta Prabhu, because he translated that verse in poetry. One who sees me everywhere, in everything that be, never loses sight of me, nor is he lost to me. So we can be always connected with Krishna if we totally focus on Krishna, always think of Krishna, which of course is the essence of Krishna consciousness. I'm sure many of you know this famous verse from Padma Purana. Let's chant it all together. Smartavyo satatam Vishnur vismritavyo na jatuchi sarvaviti nishedam syur etayor eva kinkara. So, to always think of Krishna and never forget Him, that's most important thing in Krishna consciousness. And all the rules and regulations of the scriptures are only servants of this main principle. And so, how do we develop this kind of consciousness? Any idea? By practice. Practice makes perfect. By practice, everything is possible. One time my spiritual master told a story to illustrate that point, that one time there was one king and queen, and they had a quarrel. Happens sometimes. And the king became so angry, he didn't want to see the queen, so he sent her into exile. And the reason for quarrel was that the king came back from war, in which he performed some heroic feats, and everyone was appreciating his mastery of weapon, except the queen. The queen said, by practice everything is possible. So the king became very upset, and he exiled the queen. Anyway, it was royal exile. There was a special palace just for her. She lived there, but she couldn't see the king. And he was so angry, he didn't want to see her for a few years. She lived alone. But after a few years, his anger subsided and he decided to check on his wife. So he went to that place, and she was in a garden taking a walk when he came, and he saw a big bull in that garden as well, together with her. And he said, "Nice to see you. We haven't seen each other for a while." And she said, "Yes, I'm also glad that you came, but just give me 1 minute. I have to take care of one business first." So she came to the bull, and she lifted the bull, and she carried the bull up the stairs somewhere into the palace. And then she came back. And the king's jaw dropped. You know, how women can carry a bull. And when she came back, she said, "How did you do that? How it is possible?" She said, "You remember I told you by practice anything is possible? When I went into exile, I took a small newborn calf with me. And I carried this calf in my hands everywhere I went. And the calf was growing, and I kept carrying him everywhere. And so now the calf grew into a bull, and I carried the bull also. Because I practiced since he was small calf." So, and then king said, "Yes, now I've realized that you were right. By practice, everything is possible." It's true. There is nothing impossible. So, yeah, it seems to be impossible to always think of Krishna and never forget him. But if we practice long enough and hard enough, we can do that. We can always think of Krishna and never forget him. And that's why so much of Bhagavad Gita, probably a third of the whole book, is dedicated to the techniques of remembering Krishna, right? Starting from chapter 7. So chapter 6, Krishna establishes this principle, Yamam pashyati saratrasaram chamai pashyati, one who sees me everywhere and everything in me. And then from chapter 7 onwards, he explains how it is done, right? Starting with very basic things. What's that? Rasoham. What's that? Rasoham? Sorry. Anyway, pranava sarvavideshu, shabdake purusham nrishu. So he gives unlimited examples how one can see him in everywhere, and how to remember him. Chapter 7, most of it dedicated to that. Chapter 9 is dedicated to that. Chapter 10. Chapter 11 is demonstration what he spoke in chapter 10. And then chapter 15 as well. There are a number of verses describing that. So quite a large part of Bhagavad Gita is dedicated to that point. How do we practice seeing Krishna everywhere? And what can help us in this regard? Because, you know, remembering Krishna comes by Krishna's mercy. Anyone recognizes that? If you just try to remember Krishna mechanically, it doesn't work. Even if you chant Hare Krishna, it doesn't work. I chant Krishna's names, and you think of something else. You are right in the temple, right in front of Krishna, and your mind is somewhere else. Anyone had this experience? Okay, so it's universal. So we can only remember Krishna by Krishna's mercy. So the point is, how do we get Krishna's mercy? And then next line of this verse says, Mrita Sanjivikaya Anayagira. Your voice can bring death to life. Anyone remembers any other very famous verse from the same 10th canto of Bhagavad Gita, where in some very special devotees are saying that Krishna's words and Krishna's activities are giving life? Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavi piriditam kalmashabham Shavana mangalam shimadatam bhuvi grinantiye bhurida jana. So this is what Gopi Gita says. This is 10:31:9, very famous verse, which was the key verse King Prataparudra quoted while massaging Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the what's that garden? Jagannath Vallabh garden. And so when Lord Chaitanya heard this verse, he stood up and embraced the king, and he said, Burida Jana, you are most magnanimous, you are most munificent. So this verse is also saying that this is what gives life. Krishna's words and Krishna's activities. The nectar of your words and your activities are life and soul for all who suffer in this world, etc. These narrations transmitted by learned sages eradicates one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly those who spread this message of Godhead are most beneficent. So this is one thing they say, that tapta jivanam. So the words and activities of Krishna are the very life for all who suffer in this world. Anyone had this experience that Krishna consciousness is giving life? Especially it is very obvious when you just come across Krishna consciousness, right? Before that, you're as good as dead. But then you come across Krishna consciousness, and holy name is, of course, very powerful, but my personal experience is coming across Bhagavad Gita. Such an amazing book that before even hearing about Bhagavad Gita, before learning what Bhagavad Gita is, I was thinking there must be a book in the world which has answers to every single important question in life. Who am I? Where I come from? What will happen after death? What is this world? Where it starts, where it ends? And who is God? How He looks like? Where He lives? What is He doing? Karma, yoga, reincarnation, meditation, everything is explained in Bhagavad Gita. And I was searching for this knowledge, I couldn't find it. But then one day, when I came across Bhagavad Gita, I was shocked. I thought, wow, this is the book. I knew exists, but I didn't know what is the book. So now I know. And so, yeah, Bhagavad Gita is unbelievable. Answers every single question in our life. And so, yeah, then because before that, I couldn't figure out why do I live, because I used to think that purpose of life is to enjoy, and I tried very hard. And I had all facilities for enjoyment. And then the more I tried to enjoy, the more miserable I was becoming. Anyone had this experience in the material world? The more you try to enjoy, the more miserable you become. And then I was thinking, what is this? I have everything to, all the facilities for enjoyment, everything is affordable. But the more I try to enjoy, the more miserable I am. So where is the happiness? How do I become happy? What's the purpose of life anyway? If I am born just to die one day, what's the use of doing anything? So I was really desperate. And to such an extent that I couldn't see any meaning of continued living like that. And then when I came across Bhagavad Gita, it became so crystal clear. And so, for the past 40 years, I'm still fascinated by Bhagavad Gita. And yeah, this is what revives. This is what gives us Krishna consciousness, and this is what helps us to reboot our Krishna consciousness, because, many times if you have some device like laptop or maybe smartwatches or your smartphone, oftentimes they require rebooting, right? Restarting, because without that they don't function properly. And sometimes we can feel stuck in our Krishna consciousness, right? Sometimes we may feel, wow, that something has to be done to restart, reboot my consciousness. Anyone had this experience that you feel stuck and you feel the need of being, getting reboot? Because there are so many problems externally, internally, you don't know how to deal with. It's very interesting. One time, one temple president in Prabhupada times came to him and he said, Srila Prabhupada, I have so many problems, I want you to help to solve these problems. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, okay, but have you read Bhagavad Gita? He said, Srila Prabhupada, I've read Bhagavad Gita, but we're not talking about Bhagavad Gita now, I'm talking about real problems. And Prabhupada said, yes, we will discuss, but I want you to first read Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover, everything, verses, purpose, everything. He said, Srila Prabhupada, but it's really important that I need to solve these problems. Prabhupada said, I can guarantee problems will be solved, just read Bhagavad Gita first, then we'll discuss. We'll give you a room, we'll give you a copy of Bhagavad Gita, prasadam. Just sit there from morning till night, just read Bhagavad Gita. Don't worry about, chant your rounds and then read Bhagavad Gita. We'll give you prasadam, everything. Don't worry about anything else. After you finish, you come, we'll discuss your problems. He said, okay. So he went to the room and he started, reading Bhagavad Gita. And in a couple of days, he finished Bhagavad Gita. If you read all day long, you can finish whole Bhagavad Gita in a couple of days, no problem. And then he came to Srila Prabhupada, bowed down to him. He said, Srila Prabhupada, with your blessings, I finished Bhagavad Gita, reading Bhagavad Gita. Now I'm ready to go back. Prabhupada said, wait, you wanted to discuss problems with me? He said, no, there are no problems. I know all the solutions. Prabhupada said, what is the solution? Bhagavad Gita is the solution. So Bhagavad Gita can give us full reboot in Krishna consciousness, fully refresh us. And so, the last pada of this verse is really most important thing. That is not just acknowledgement, but appreciation of devotees. Karvani kim adhyayate priyam vada me valgita kantha kokila. O sweet-throated cuckoo, in a voice that could revive the dead, please tell me what I can do today to please you. So, they perceive the cuckoo as devotee, who reminds them of Krishna, who tells them the same thing Krishna is telling them. And so they want to serve this cuckoo. They want to do something for the cuckoo as well. And it's pretty amazing that seeing cuckoos as devotees. Sometimes we don't even see devotees as devotees. That's the difference between our level of consciousness and the level of consciousness of these great Vaishnavis. And so, but yeah, they recognize that cuckoo is giving them Krishna, so they want to serve cuckoo. And it's also very important for us, and actually this is the way to become Krishna conscious, serving Vaishnavas. I mean, that's minimal level. Greater level is serve all human beings, because why do we have to serve human beings? Why do we have to do something special for human beings? Anyone has any idea? Why do we have to take care of human beings? Of course, taking care means connecting them to Krishna, right? Giving them Krishna consciousness. Because we can do only that much. There are many problems we cannot solve, right? But Krishna can solve any problem. So the best care is to give them Krishna. Because Krishna is the greatest value anyone can have in their lives. But why should we try to benefit all human beings? Anyone has any idea? What's the reason? Why especially humans? Higher consciousness, yes. Because Krishna is telling in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam that of all types of living entities, human beings are most dear to me. So all humans are very dear to Krishna. That's why, we need to take care of humans first. But then not only humans, all species of life are connected to Krishna. So we need to do something to take care of all species of life, right? And so in here, the queens of Dwaraka are showing that they want to take care even of the cuckoo. So serving everyone, all living entities. And it's very interesting. We know very well this famous text from Bhagavad Gita, which explains how to approach spiritual master. I'm sure everybody knows the famous Tadvidhi pranipatana pariprashnana sevaya upadikshanti te gyanam gyanina statva darshina. I suppose we learned this verse in the very beginning of our spiritual practice. But it's not less important the following verse, 435. Yad gyatva punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava yana bhutanya sheshani drakshasatmanya tomai. Krishna says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. So it's pretty amazing that unless we have this understanding, that means we haven't got the knowledge from the spiritual master. So only when we actually learn from spiritual master, then we can see all living beings connected to Krishna, which is very high level, but this is what Krishna consciousness is supposed to be giving us. And so we can understand that at least we can start with serving Vaishnavas. If we cannot serve all human beings, if we cannot serve all living beings, at least we can start by serving Vaishnavas. And by serving Vaishnavas, we can acknowledge the benefits we are getting in Krishna consciousness, and we can actually start developing spiritually. Because sometimes, we might even wonder, am I developing spiritually or not? Or maybe I got stuck. Anyone ever had this question? Am I growing in Krishna consciousness or not? So, but if we serve Vaishnavas, I even thought of the maxim that all problems in devotional service can be solved by serving devotees. All problems in devotional service can be solved by serving devotees. And so if we serve devotees, we'll get obvious benefits and we'll obviously advance in Krishna consciousness. And finally, we'll be able to achieve that goal of always seeing Krishna everywhere and remembering Krishna with love and devotion. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. We still have 7 minutes. If there are any questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, Prabhu has his hand up. There is a microphone for
Hare
recording,
Krishna.
if you can also take it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for explaining the verse also with such nice examples. Like you said, the example of Everest and also the example of shower. And also you spoke so wonderfully the practical application in our life, personal application today, that the queens can see this bird, cuckoo, as devotee, and we are not able to see devotees as devotees. And Maharaj, you were so much mentioning that, begin it. So one thought was coming that many times we hear if somebody is very sincere in his bhakti, he has no ulterior motives, he just wants to serve God, that is sufficient. So in that outlook of doing bhakti, where does this become important of valuing devotees and respecting and dealing with them properly?
Yeah.
And also I was thinking that in Gita, where Krishna mentions that, respect devotees, you mentioned 11th canto Bhagavatam, but in Gita where it is mentioned that?
Where Gita says we should serve devotees. Well, one of the Chaturshloki verses of Bhagavad Gita 10.9 glorifies devotees. Matchita madgata prana, bodhayanda parasparam, katayanda shamam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. Right? It says that Matchita, the thoughts of my devotees are focused on me. Madgata prana, their lives are dedicated to my service. Bodhayant parasparam, and they always enlighten one each other about me, and Katayanta Shamam Nityam, always discussing me, and they find a lot of satisfaction and pleasure in these activities, Tushyanti Charamanticha. So, and chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, most of it is explaining the qualities of the devotees who are very dear to Krishna. So we can understand that devotees are very dear to Krishna. There are so many verses Krishna speaks about this, how his devotees are dear to him, right? Mad Bhakta, Me Priya, Same Priya, etc. And if we want to please Krishna, obviously we have to please those who are dear to Krishna. As Prabhupada says, love me, love my dog. But then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very clear about this, about serving Vaishnavas. Many, many verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita alone, what to speak of Bhagavat, Chaitanya Bhagavat and other books. He says that directly. Prabhu kahe, Vaishnava Seva, Nama Sankirtan, Dui Pada Shigra Pabe, Shri Krishna Charan. He says, if you serve Vaishnavas and chant the holy name, then Dui Pada, only these two steps you have to make. Shigra Pabe, Shri Krishna Charan, and very quickly you will achieve the lotus feet of Krishna. So, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna, so in this way we can understand that Krishna is also, and of course there are so many statements in Puranas, Krishna speaks about this importance of serving Vaishnavas.
And Maharaj, that first part of my question was that if somebody is very sincere in his bhakti, he is doing his given service very properly, sincerely, but then why does he need to serve and care for Vaishnavas or serve Vaishnavas, please Vaishnavas, why?
Well, because this is our eternal position, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anudas, that our eternal position is that we are servants of the servants of the servants of Krishna, who is the master of the gopis, right? And there is one powerful verse in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by a demon, Vritrasura. So I guess I really like this verse because I also come from demoniac background, so whatever demons say is very important for me. So Vritrasura says, Aham haritava padaikamulam dasana daso bhavitasmi bhuya manasmarita supater gunamste grinitava karma karotukaya. So Prabhupada says that this verse is the very essence of Krishna consciousness. Aham haritava padaikamulam. O my Lord, Hari, when will I finally take shelter of your lotus feet? Pada ekamulam. Dasa anudasa bhavitasmi bhuya, and become servant of your servants. Manas maret, when will I always be able to remember you? Asupater gunamste, by thinking of your wonderful qualities. Grinitavak, when will I use my words to glorify you? And karma karotoikaya, when all my activities will be dedicated to you, when this day will come. So this is the prayer of Vritrasura. So he says very clearly that We should strive to be servants of the servants, because there are only few very special personalities who have privilege of serving Krishna directly. And it's interestingly enough, they are not even Jivas, they are Shaktis, right? Like Srimati Radharani, Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, they can serve Krishna directly. What about everybody else? Everybody else is servant of their servants. So that's why being servant of the servant is our eternal position, in here and in the spiritual world as well. So that's why if we think we serve Krishna directly, you know, that is at Padma Purana, Krishna says, one who thinks he is my servant, he is not really my servant, but one who understands he is servant of my servants, that he is my real servant. So, I mean, this is what differentiates Madhyamadhikari, advanced devotee, from Kanishtadhikari, from neophyte devotee. Neophyte devotee thinks I am serving Krishna, but advanced devotee understands I cannot serve Krishna, I can only serve Krishna's devotees. Hare Krishna. All right. Probably last question, and then we have Madhurena Samapayat, sweet ending for everybody. Please stay tuned.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I have one comment. The Parvati asked Lord Shiva, which is the highest mode of worship? So Lord Shiva explained, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu aradhana paramam tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarjanam. The highest worship is Lord Vishnu, one should worship. Even higher than that is who the devotee of Lord Krishna. That is the highest. So we can please Lord Krishna through the serving the devotees. Krishna accepts our service through the devotees. It is not different than serving Krishna and serving devotee is the same. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay, so now the sweet ending. Yeah. We will, I just came from Jagannath Puri and I brought some burfi from Sri Jagannath Swami.
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested to have some Jagannath Mahaprasad, you can come. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.